I can see a lot of people have done some research. We should appreciate it. You spent some time here. So again, we're looking for new information. And so next up is James Sinton.
Thank you. So I live in Ward 1, and as a lifetime ecologist, I recently organized a detailed survey of the health of Walton Lake and its immediate surroundings. Contrary to the 1964, 65, and 2002 reports, we found the lake to be surprisingly healthy, with a wide and abundant spectrum of wildlife and plant species, including one or more possibly endangered mussels. The 3-foot deep water clarity supports high levels of abundant biodiversity, indicating a healthy and stable ecosystem, with water quality indicators including native frogs, bass, clams, swans, and aquatic birds, all of them sensitive to pollutants, turbidity, and nutrient overloads, which are common in unhealthy lakes. Their presence suggests the lake maintains clean, oxygen-rich waters with stable temperatures and pH conditions. Biodiversity and food web integrity is another one. The presence of top predators, bald eagles, ospreys, bass, insectivores like bats, swallows, and frogs, herbivores like geese and deer, omnivores like raccoons and skunks, and even carnivores, foxes and weasels, points to a fully functioning and layered food web around the lake. Habitat diversity, aquatic vegetation, emergent wetlands, riparian buffer zones, and adjoining woodlands all appear healthy, providing the structural diversity needed to sustain this array of wildlife. Then low human disturbance, the continued presence of shy and habitat-sensitive species like beavers, bobcats, bald eagles, and transient species like trumpeter swans implies that the area is relatively undisturbed by pollution, excessive development, or shoreline modification. The lake provides essential habitat to a wide range of species across multiple trophic levels, and the environmental conditions support sensitive species known to be indicators of ecological integrity and clean water. These healthy lake indicators include, and this is powerful, local stakeholders and visitors who enjoy and celebrate the lake's beauty. All the homeowners around the lake, and many have lived there for more than a decade, happily confirm their ongoing appreciation and delight in the lake's health, as do golfers, boaters, and fishermen. This is an established indicator of lake health. Water clarity and naturally resolving algal blooms, another indicator. Absence of fish kills or die-offs in the lake for more than 25 years. Presence of healthy, possibly endangered, native mussel species on the lake bed, among the most threatened animals in existence according to the Iowa DNR, with Iowa hosting 9 endangered and 6 threatened species. Also healthy populations of non-invasive amphibian species, a key indicator of lake health. 5 non-invasive species of fish, especially the sensitive largemouth bass, with small heads and large bellies indicative of good health, for which the lake is famous across southeast Iowa. All these point to excellent lake health. 15 species of desirable native mammals, including 2 species of bats, are reported around the lake. This group includes most of the wild mammal species found in Jefferson County, indicating an attractive, healthy local ecosystem. At least 4 species of snakes, including 2 water snakes, are observed around and in the lake. At least 2 species of turtle seen in and around the lake strongly indicate a healthy lake ecosystem. 16 species of water birds and raptors are seen in and around the lake, including the rare and very sensitive osprey, only recently restored after becoming extinct in Iowa. The restoration involved hundreds of volunteers And last year, only 47 fledglings were hatched across the whole of the state. And we have them there at Walton Lake. Another rare bird at Walton Lake is the green heron. 36 smaller native bird species live around the lake. This is a high percentage of all the smaller bird species found in Jefferson County. So, you can see that Walton Lake is biologically rich, ecologically stable, and we're very grateful to you for this opportunity to explore the wonders of Walton Lake together. Thank you.
Great, thank you, James. Appreciate it. Vesna?
Job,
And can you remind us which ward you live in?
One,
You're in one.
yeah.
Are you on the lake?
No.
No. Okay, great.
Unfortunately. So I was looking forward to
Ward one's that
sparing.
way, sorry.
Oh, pardon?
Never mind.
I was looking forward to sparing us all another 5-minute address until nature or God threw a dead fish in my path. The message to my nose was unmistakable, so I'm here to deliver it. Literally, I was walking along Mint Boulevard 1 week ago when I found myself gagging on the smell of carrion. I almost reversed course, but was curious to know what creature was producing this extraordinary stench. 100 feet later, I discovered a 10-inch dead fish, buzzing with flies and emitting an almost unbearable odor. Not 10,000 dead fish in a drained lake, just one. The creature likely dropped from the talons of some raptor trying to escape a mob of birds. I wonder, what is the council's plan and what is its budget for remediating the reek of countless rotting carcasses, or for locating local homeowners during the time it takes for these carcasses to decompose? No one can be expected to spend weeks stewing in sulfur and ammonia-rich compounds such as putrescine, cadaverine, scatol, and other volatile chemicals typical of rotting fish and, by most accounts, hell. Also, City Council paints a picture of restoration, which seems to me to hold little water. At its June 9th meeting, the DNR estimate for restoring the lake was given at 15 to 20 years, with an estimate of 5 years until the biology of the lake would support successfully restocking its fish. 1 week later, at a committee meeting, that estimate was dismissed as referring to an improved lake rather than one restored to mere current levels. And there was palpable excitement about restocking the fish as early as November of this year. All concerns about the time required to build up the lake's biology to levels where it could sustain such fish were waved away with talk of using the northern finger to maintain a seed population of aquatic species with which to re-inoculate Walton Lake proper. But common sense struggles to keep pace with this fishtail. The lake's watershed fingers are too shallow to ensure survival of species trapped there in the case of a hot, dry spell. Since the ecology of an oversized puddle is different from the ecology of a lake capable of sustaining desirable fish species, expecting to use one ecological niche to support another and jumpstart it seems a stretch. Either way, has the city budgeted for the cost of this Hail Mary pass? Nor is there evidence the city has planned or budgeted for the costs of restoring the lake to its current levels of vitality, let alone the time and cost required to improve it to whatever standard is being used to justify killing it today. The cost of a full restoration, typically in the millions of dollars and lasting decades, requires community awareness, community support as much as 35%, and cost sharing via public-private partnerships. Also, since the agency tasked with overseeing such restoration has a long wait list, it seems prudent to ensure this phase is fully covered before proceeding to drain the lake. Leaving it all to chance, then invoking unforeseen costs and crisis seems fiscally and in every way irresponsible. Last, Doug Reinert admitted that it is nearly impossible to prevent reintroduction of invasive species to Iowa's lakes. Anyone managing natural resources understands that the best defense against invasives is a mature ecosystem, and that disrupting such an ecosystem throws open the gate to invaders. And yes, there will be exceptional cases where a troubled lake may lose its ability to handle invasive species and may need to be drained, but that is clearly not the case with Walton Lake. Such decisions must be made with care, with respect for the lives and dignity of all whose lives are tied to the lake, and with proper assessments. No such assessments or care have yet been extended to Walton Lake and its residents. I do thank you for this opportunity to address some of the issues which have yet to be included in a proper cost analysis for replacing the bridge over Walton Lake. Thank you.
Felicity Spaulding.
There's one separate spreadsheet for the collected appendices, and I don't have enough for everybody because my printer ran out of ink. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak again about Walton Lake and trying to preserve it. I'm Felicity, and I'm one of the homeowners around Walton Lake. We've contacted 36 so far, and every single one has signed a petition to stop the draining of the lake, which I have here. I wish you could live on Walton Lake, because then you might understand why we see this as an act of unnecessary destruction. Morning mist curling off the water, birdsong filling the air, moonlight dancing across glassy waters. We are really blessed to live in its beauty. If you lived here, you would know it's not just a place to live, but a place where time slows and life deepens. And this is why we moved there and why we oppose your decision. Many of us are retired and we want to spend our remaining years enjoying the lake, not living with a decimated one for years to come. Some of us, after all it's possible, may be gone before the lake is restored and re-established. We've invested millions into our homes collectively and contribute $230,000 a year in taxes. We are stakeholders. That none of you contacted us before making this decision is quite a shocking oversight to me. Out of all of its impacts, this decision affects us most. We understand that mistakes happen. What's harder to understand is a refusal to reconsider, even when new facts and new perspectives emerge. There are, after all, win-win solutions. Let's tack now to the overlooked costs the city may incur under the current plan and how they compare to a practical alternative that is significantly cheaper. Throughout this next section, my statements refer to details you can find in the spreadsheet and accompanying appendices. Reviewing the council's decision, it appears it was based on an overstated water depth. In truth, only a few feet of water will remain after the specified 11.5-foot drawdown. This severe volume reduction will cause widespread fish death, swarms of flies and other pests, unbearable odors, ecosystem collapse, and destroy the lake's aesthetic and recreational value for years. Cleanup and odor suppression alone could cost between $38,000 and $66,000. This figure is based on data from similar small lake fish kills. And once again, that's in the documents I gave you, the analysis. Lime and chemical treatments can harm amphibians and insects, reducing biodiversity even after refilling. And those same chemicals may be toxic to us, the residents who live closest to the lake. Has the city got insurance to cover any medical liabilities in such situations? And if the smell makes our homes unlivable, will the city cover relocation costs? These alone could amount to around $100,000, again on the spreadsheet. And there's more. The golf course depends on lake water. Realizing this, the city's last-minute idea to tap a nearby fire hydrant could total at least $6,000. This figure includes connection fees and a water cost of, really is just an estimate because I've no idea. Let's say 1/10 of the retail value of creating potable water. There's also a question of the impact on our water pressure. Have these issues been investigated? There's some emails relating to that also in the appendices. Even without relocation, the estimated total for the city's causeway culvert system now sits around $285,000. If relocation is needed, that could jump to $385,000. Why take this risk when a proven alternative exists? One verified aluminum bridge, 6 foot wide and capable of carrying golf carts 88 feet long, capable of reaching across easily, costs $182,000 all up. This is $100,000 less than the current plan. It's built to last, serves the golf course's needs, and doesn't require draining the lake. This alternative was submitted before any decision was finalised, and a basic investigation would have shown its feasibility. Why not choose a win-win solution that benefits both city and the community? Let's not use sunk costs as permanent obstacles. Spending $60,000 to exit a contract shaped by incomplete and incorrect information is better than overspending by $100,000 or more.
Felicity.
You preserve, I've just got 2 sentences. You preserve the ecosystem and increase the council's good standing in the community. We ask for an immediate pause, a reassessment of alternatives, and open consultation with stakeholders. And I thank you so much for your service here and having to deal with all of us, and for your thoughtful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Noyes.
I want to thank everyone again. This has been quite the journey we've all been on, and amazing things have happened. People that I never met before came forward. We have these beautiful relationships now. The love of the lake, which we're fearful of it being gone. What it's done is it's shown how much more deeply we love the lake and how much more deeply we care about the animals and all the species. So there's been a lot of great things, and I see a lot of really good things coming out of all of this. I still see that. Now I did give you some documents that I'm sure you've looked at. I think it's clear that first of all that we have a protected right to speak against the policies of the city council. That's a First Amendment right, and it shouldn't be threatened against, and I'll just stop there. I know that Melanie was asked to provide to the DNR the worst case scenario if the lake was drained. So that's when the second DNR permit, drawdown permit was issued. The problem is there was significant errors in that report, and I think I have that all because I've given you a copy of that petition to the DNR, the second petition. The first petition failed to even admit there was any littoral rights to the landowners. So that was faulty. And then we had to file the second one, and that one claimed there'd be 12.5 feet water left after the lake was drained 11.5 feet. That's another major error. I did do some research. There is liability to the city. If errors of this nature are made, and you have 36 out of the 36 homeowners that have already said they really don't want to see this happen. So that's just put in there for your review. It is true you have been given copies of formal concepts of bridges that could be used that are long enough and less costly. So you have that. You can't say you don't have it anymore. Now there's some actually really good news that I want to talk about. I gave you a document called The Advantages of Holding Off for Now on Draining the Lake. And I just want to read it to you very quickly. Melanie has stated publicly that they don't even need to start draining the lake until August 8th. They can fulfill the existing contract with Trish and wait until August the 8th. This delay doesn't interfere with the Trish contract fulfillments. This delay would save 130,000 gallons of treated water every day. This helps to avoid depletion of the Jordan well, which is extremely expensive, as you know. This also allows time for the DNR to complete their due diligence and the administrative review process. It also allows homeowners to enjoy the fullness and splendor of the lake during this time frame. It further allows time to confirm the actual depth of the lakes and how much water would remain if the lake is in fact drained at 11.5 feet as planned. Once it is confirmed what the actual depth of the lake would be if it drained, it can then be determined what the actual environmental impact would be to the fish, amphibians, and other lake-dependent species. We can't even say that now because the information that's been given has not been accurate. Further, it would allow time to determine the effect on the homeowners, the golf course members, and the public. Further, it would allow time for interested citizens to more fully research the likely cost of golf cart bridges alternatives. And it also would allow the homeowners in the city to complete a request for proposal on just the golf cart alternative. We are in a catch-22. We can't say what it is because the request for proposal hasn't been done. So that could be done. The main thing that I want to thank Melanie for is an engineering report that revealed the actual history of the relationship between the city and the Walton Club. So it was 1931 when the first lease was entered into. That lease lasted for 84 years, and during that 84 years, it was entirely the responsibility of the golf club to maintain the bridge and look after it, not the city. It wasn't until 2015, only 10 years ago, that the city assumed responsibility. The good news is that 10-year contract is up in December of this year. That provides us with an opportunity to renegotiate between the city and the golf club. The city, obviously the golf club has an interest in getting a new lease, that's clear. They want a new lease. The city has an interest in getting rid of this responsibility for this bridge. Here's the idea. The city, a new lease would be drafted. The city agrees to pay $134,000 only to the Walton Club for the bridge of their desire. The Walton Club agrees to complete their own design, and that would save the city $100,000. Drish, who's a member of the golf club, from everything I've been told, I'll only take one more second if I could, I've been told is a wonderful, reasonable man, who's very chilled out, and he's a member of the golf club. I believe that the golf club would be very happy to talk to Drish about their new idea that's going to make them happy and everyone else happy, and he'd say, fine, I'll just do the work on the new project. So the only thing that we're missing is the authority to negotiate with the lease. I suggested that John Morrissey could negotiate this lease, and he said he doesn't have the authority. So if we could merely consider giving John the authority to negotiate a new lease, which has to happen anyway, because the December 25 is coming up, we can see what might happen. It might solve everyone's problems, save the city $100,000, remove all of this. One more thing, the homeowners in this committee have already raised about a third of the money beyond the 134. We would agree to raise the rest of the funds for the golf club, which means the golf club gets it for free. They get the bridge of their choice for free. They get a new lease. The city saves $100,000. That's the idea, and I would just like for John to be able to pursue that. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that. I just would like to make one point really clear that we've repeated several times is, and we know the numbers that have come with this bridge. However, I will say that it has been our engineers' talking point that no matter what bridge we put in, we may have to lower the lake to put those piers in. Otherwise, we have to understand what sinking there would be, how much silt is there. So, again, I'm not an engineer, I'm kind of repeating. So this idea that you just don't have to lower the lake at all, I'm not sure is accurate, and I know you people, several of you believe that is the case, that you can just put it in, and but we don't know that really at this point is the God's truth. So just a little thing that I want to mention that seems to be, a difference of opinion, but again, that's not my specialties. So appreciate it. John, I'd like to hear from the council if that's something they want to number one, either give you authority to do, start talking about that lease. I would like to say that I think we are looking at and the delay process. I mean, we have been talking about it at City Hall, and a conversation has not been had yet with Durish, but it's not off the table, let's just say that, and looking at timelines. So, John, do you want to speak to some of the points that have been here general tonight before we go on to AdHoc?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that sort of going backwards on this, Ed alludes to threats about his right to speak before us. We've had 4 meetings in a row where I haven't seen anybody deprived of free speech in the sense that this council has ever allowed public forum. So I think that's a bunch of horse feathers. As far as Ed coming here and telling us that the city is ignoring fact, the city from the very first of these meetings tried to present the situation that the public record supports. There's a 12-page attachment to the things that were done for the council when we were talking about the first 2 sessions that has to do with the abstract of title out at Walton. Also, as far as the way Ed has represented the group, he's an effective speaker. I don't take anything away from Ed. I've known him as a colleague for probably 35 years. But the other side of that, Ed, is you've been representing in your emails that you're not doing any of this as a lawyer. And it sure looks to me like you're doing it as a lawyer, even though you're not licensed as a lawyer and you're not insured as a lawyer. You've been representing on your emails, which are on Noyes Law Office stationery about half the time, that you're doing this as a single person, but then you're here representing 35 lake house owners as far as I know. So there's a contradiction in there very clearly. Secondly, in the last few days, the city's received a 7-page draft lawsuit from you, which is something that lawyers do. So if you're not here as a lawyer, don't hand us 7 pages of litigation. I mean that, Ed. It's just not.
Can I respond, Joe?
Yeah. No,
You're
you can't.
making a public you're making a public presentation here, and I should be able to respond.
Well,
I
no,
have
this
to-
isn't a debate, Ed. This is my chance to say something, and it deserves to be said as far as why these meetings are gonna go on probably again and again into the future. And as far as some of the stuff that's been misrepresented to the public here, it needs to be sorted. As far as I'm concerned, why all these people have a belief and have been made to feel that the lake is gonna be gone, that is just not true. And I don't think DNR would say anything different to us as far as that lake going on into another year or two, not being restored to the lake that people look out in the morning over coffee. It may not be the same lake ecologically for a while, but also I've been a fan of the lake for 50 years. And a lot of the ecological stuff that Mr. Sinton talked about tonight, we all know that. But I also know the water snakes, they're gonna go over behind the second causeway. They're still gonna be out on the lake even if the lake was bone dry. The shorebirds are gonna go up to the fingers. Those animals that live out there, they're not gonna go very far. A lot of the ecology is still gonna be there. So, I don't wanna have the misunderstanding that DNR, for some reason, is completely out of the loop on this. I think DNR has considered that going forward, and I think that as far as our engineer, she's been in communication with DNR a number of times. I've had the opportunity of conversations with DNR. Our city administrators had opportunities for that. But right now, what is being ignored is what I have been expressing since the beginning public forums for this. every one of the homeowners out there, they got an abstract of title to a new subdivision that the city created to resolve something with DNR that needed to be resolved. Reference was made to the reports of water quality back in the mid-60s and also in 2002, I believe it was, which were not positive reports. And the city did the subdivision to satisfy that. So if Mr. Sinton doesn't feel that those reports were accurate, I'll respect his opinion as far as him saying that, but at the same time, the reason you have a subdivision out there is because the DNR didn't think so, and the city council didn't think so. And when we fixed this so that you could have a subdivision with beautiful location and beautiful homes, it would work going into the future for generations. This council and all the past councils have always believed in that lake, and that's being missed as a point in this whole thing. Every one of your abstractive titles shows that the city has always owned the lake, and the city, except for the control and dominion that DNR has over them, the city has always made the decisions about the lake. Other than that, there's also a large easement around the entire lake that allows the city always access for purpose of dealing with it for what it is. It was built man-made, it's not a natural lake. It was built as a surface water storage facility for part of our reservoir system for potable water. It still is, but it's not used that way right now. It's a sitting body of water. And there's nothing wrong with that being a beautiful sitting body of water, but it's still subject to DNR monitoring. So make no mistake, DNR is still in the picture always on this, and the city treats it as a part of an asset called the water utility. So when we talk about it and who should make the decisions, every time we've had somebody at the podium that questioned something like that, I asked them, don't you think this is a decision ultimately for the city council to make? And I still believe that to this day, and I think it's a very defensible position. As far as the abstract of title, they also, for every one of the homeowners out there, you have a group of multi-pages of covenants concerning what you can and cannot do in the lake. You cannot put a dock in the lake. You cannot swim in the lake. You are doing things that DNR frowns on any place where there's a reservoir that has the potential for being part of a water system. And you know, that's should be common sense and should be obvious to all of us. And I don't think any of us are troubled by the idea that maybe you can't swim in it. And maybe DNR, at the time that we did this back at the subdividing, approved the covenants as being consistent with their requirements for the lake being kept pristine. And that lake right now, as far as the quality of the water in it, you'll get a variety of opinions all the way from worst case scenario that it's full of under the surface tangled vegetation that thrives because of sunlight, and some of the green algae bloom that isn't so green and isn't so good, and other kinds of things that are in the water that make the water less than pristine. I don't think DNR is going to give you the same glowing report that Mr. Sinton did, and I don't think that DNR is going to be troubled if there's some adjustments in the level of the lake that ultimately result in parts of the lake having to be restored. But that's just my opinion from being around for 35 years and watching this every year with DNR over our shoulder. At times we had threats by DNR that we were going to be fined $10,000 a day. That would have been just as unpopular to our taxpayers as anything else that's come up in these hearings the last 4 times we've had them. So believe me, I'm not trying to beat up on people that have gotten out there and enjoyed the view enjoyed the new home site, helped us with the cost of things that were done back in 2000 to 2005 to make that the place that it is. You got a new bridge, you got a new central water system, you got a new central septic or sewer system, and all of that's going to last for generations. So's the lake. Nobody said anything from this council, nobody said anything from the engineering standpoint of that lake being gone tomorrow or gone anything like long-term. So I think that's a major deception that's been put on some of you as far as losing your lake. I think it's unfair, I think it's distortioned, I think it's something also that leads me to one other thing I want to say, and that is that we had an engineering effort by both our city engineer, who was very competent, contrary to people attacking her when they didn't have any other fact to throw at her, about her skills and her competence. And we had a second engineering opinion on this from a recognized long-term firm that's worked with the city as far as that same water project out at Walton, and the ongoing water purposes related to that lake. They both, to some extent, misjudged the level of drainage that would take place. Regardless of that, as far as whether that's outcome determinative about the lake or not, when the lake can be easily worked on, the lake can be easily restored over a period of time. There are different experiences around this county out in the agricultural community every year where dams are broken out, water bodies are rebuilt, water bodies are refilled, DNR restocks them, and there is no reason to doubt that on a larger scale that wouldn't be the experience at Walton Lake. If you go over to Lake Geode, you'll see that there was a lake drain 2019. Right in the middle there was COVID. They went back to it and they reopened it in 2023, and you have a beautiful restored lake over there with good fishing in it. There's no reason to think that couldn't be Walton, and there's no reason to think that Walton's going to be lost at any point in the future. The council's still fully behind the lake. The situation as far as the control of the lake has to stay the way it is in your property titles. You are owners of beautiful lakeside lots that look out on a lake that is actually owned by the city, maintained by the city for purposes other than a recreational lake, but which happens to have the beautiful additions to its usefulness that includes recreation and just plain aesthetics. So as far as the lake itself, there isn't anybody in this room that doesn't want the best for the lake. And I'm tired of hearing about somebody saying that we're destroying the lake. This thing is still a situation where I think if you had DNR at the podium right now, they would say that this will more likely than not be an improved lake by the time we're all done with this project. So I want to be clear about that. As far as the council putting me in a position of authority to negotiate anything, I negotiate every week, every month, and so forth. Part of the reason that I told Mr. Noyes I don't have the authority to do that is some of this is stuff that the council really can't delegate away. That's the other reason I don't have the authority for it, and that is that the council has to make the ultimate decisions about property that the city owns. And that's not a rare concept. It would get the city in trouble if they tried to do some things differently than they're supposed to do it. In this situation, I know Mr. Noyes referred to a catch-22 as far as getting around some things like the RFP. RFP is a request for proposals as far as what things are going to cost. The city can't avoid doing the bidding process that it has to go through. It can't avoid going through the open meetings required notices that happen every time the city meets, and it can't avoid the bidding processes that went on as far as the actual bid that was allowed in the contract we accepted. And the city is very much in an awkward position as far as in any way reneging on a contract it's already signed. I have to defend the city if they're sued for that, but I also can tell you one more thing about this, and that is that if the 7-page litigation document that was presented us last week were to be filed in district court, it would open the floodgates for things against you that you haven't been told by the man who is presenting it but says he's not doing it as a lawyer. What you're gonna look at then is we don't have any control over the contractor who will be breached. He's got his own rights to his own representation and his own claims as far as that contract being in many ways damaged or interfered with. That's not an unrealistic assessment. That's the type of case that I've been in court many times in the past as far as interference with contracts. Another part of this has to do with the situation where you as individual owners, you want to make a deal with the city, but right now as I look at it, you are what Mr. Noyes would characterize as a loosely organized group of owners with stakes in this thing. You are a loosely organized group of owners, and part of the problem with that is none of you probably are prepared or insured or represented to the point where if you become cross-claimants or cross-defendants or counter-claimants or counter-defendants, do you want this coming at you individually? That is probably where the benefit to you would be if you were a homeowners association or you had an organization that could stand up and speak for you and insure you and defend you. So I'm telling you that as a friend. I don't want to be in a position where you get picked on individually, and I don't think any of you have had that drilled into you at this point. So from my perspective, that's about as much as I'm going to say right now, except that the city, they're perfectly capable of deciding if they want me to negotiate, and I'm perfectly capable, I think, of seeing the different ways this could work. I think what you're probably going to do is get part way where you want to be. I'm hopeful you don't file litigation and Mr. Noyes doesn't pull the trigger on what he's put in our lap. I'm also hopeful that you listen as we go forward, because there are other parts of this that have to do with other people's money, other people's programs for doing things like the lake restoration, the lake restocking, the other things that have to do with the lake resuming being a high quality lake, and all of that can happen even with a bridge that the council chooses as its bridge instead of your bridge. The council's still perfectly within its rights to decide to build a much different, a much higher strength, a much better enduring bridge than a cart bridge. It won't be wrong of the council to do that, any more than it was wrong for the council to do a bigger bridge on the spillway dam when the 2002 to 2005 subdividing was being done out there. That bridge turned out to be exactly what you needed. My suspicions are that going forward, we may not have a crystal ball right now, but you'll be glad you did more on this instead of less on this, and the lake will be fine. In the end, nobody wants the lake to be gone, and nobody really wants there to be any litigation. So be clear about that. I'm more than happy to talk with any of you about this individually, or to negotiate with a group of you, or decide exactly what your standing and position is as a body of homeowners. But at this point, we still have some situations that would put you over a barrel, regardless of whether the city has some liability in this. The other side of the case puts you in an awkward situation too. I don't think that's been explained to you enough. So from that standpoint, I don't wanna pull any triggers on the other side if the city has to defend a litigation. I'd rather be sitting and talking about something that's a mediated resolution of all of this. I think the council would be delighted if there were some in-betweens as far as some of this, but the council cannot delegate its authority to you, and the council cannot not make the choice about what to do with the property it owns out there. The council still owns the lake, the abstract still says that the easements and so forth are binding, and that the covenants are binding, so I'm gonna just keep coming back to that every time there's a discussion. Frankly, at this point, I'm looking at many of you and you've heard enough. That's not where I want this thing to end though. There's more to be said and the council's got an opportunity to say it next. But I wanna be very clear about what the legal posture is on this that I see. So I've said enough, I hope it was clear. I'm not trying to frighten any of you as far as your positions as homeowners. I think you're all very much beneficiaries of something that was the best intentions of the council back when the subdivision was done. It's been a pleasure to watch the subdivision turn into what you live in, and it'll be just as good a lake after this project as going into this project. That's what I believe.
So, and I just wanna say that I do believe the council hears you, and I think they understand that if we could push this project back a little bit, it's good for the golf course. It's good for the people who live there, so, if you'll please be patient while we work through this. And, you know, council, I was thinking maybe the lease could start be worked on by the property committee while we're in this process. Is that something that you would like to
Yeah, we
move
should.
forward at this point?
We should start looking at it as soon as possible. We don't have much time, so December will come up very quickly.
Great.
May I ask a question though? Like, even if we work on the lease, and even if we are no longer responsible for maintaining the bridge, if we own the lake, what is our liability there?
That's
I
a good
mean,
question.
if we, yeah, that's my question. I don't know.
And I think that's something that needs to be hashed out, and I would suggest we do it in the property committee. My guess, or my best guess, and I did talk to Mr. Noyes last night about the history of the lake, and you know, an educated guess was that in 2015, Walton Club was probably in a more lean year, and it was getting difficult for them financially, and they saw that, you know, bridge getting older and they really don't have the money to maintain it, and so that's why it probably came to the city. And Melanie's gonna say something, go ahead. And then I also thought that because the lake belongs to the city, that anything on top of that lake should belong to the city, so I figured liability's part of it too, but I think that should be fleshed out, but
Well,
maybe you have the answer, Melanie.
Could someone explain why the Walton Club has insurance on the bridge and a liability associated with that insurance if we're responsible?
So a couple things that the statement about the change in the lease, that was something that was very obvious to me and I found interesting. Unless anyone was on the council at that time and wants to understand the reasoning or remembers the reasoning, one possible explanation is because the roads were dedicated at the time, and that the statement as far as the city taking ownership of all of the roads and bridges might not have been intended to incorporate this bridge at all, but because of the language, we can't determine whether it was intended to at all. Because when things get annexed into the city, the roads become the city's. And so the word bridge was probably added in there because of the bridge over the spillway, and that was it was a very hot topic when the subdivision came about. So that is also a theory. This could be an unintended consequence of annexing the area. The other thing I want to point out is when the as we negotiate, this came to City Hall by the board. And at the time, the board did not realize that the city had responsibility for this at all. They actually called it and wanted me to set up a meeting with the Economic Development Committee to see if there is any way they could get lost funds or any sort of city contribution to help them pay for the bridge. And so before I sent it off to the Economic Development Committee, I thought, well, and Doug Reiner and I talked about it, and I said, well, what does the lease say? And that's when we discovered, oh, it's our responsibility, not theirs. So, that could answer the question as to why they carry the liability insurance. They thought they had the responsibility. So there are a lot of things that, up until 2015, that's the way it had always been done. And come 2015, maybe the lease never got changed, or the insurance policy never got changed. Things like that had just been renewed year after year. I can't necessarily answer that, but those are some theories. So regardless of, I just want to bring that perspective that the board was asking us for some assistance regardless on how we move forward.
When did the board ask?
When it first came to us, like in April of last year.
Property committee over a year ago.
Well, before I brought it to property committee, the board had come to me saying, hey, can we meet with economic development about getting some sort, or ways and means about getting some lost money or something like that.
This is approximately April last year.
Yeah, it was the very first contact that I had with the board.
So, council, would you be open to moving this situation, moving the lease and start talking about past history and moving forward, and in the meantime, we'll, keep working on, we're waiting on DNR permit and working on possibly a delay here a little bit. So we have more water out there for the golf course and residents can enjoy through the summer. Anyway, so that's just an idea that we go ahead and move that and start looking at it and working on it.
Yeah, move that we send it to property committee?
It should go to property.
Property committe, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by SD, second by Flournoy to move the Walton lease to the property committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Esty?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Hipp?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And, yes.
So I do have a question. So what does that mean in terms of the process? There is a contract signed with Tourist Construction at this point. What happens to that?
This is just the lease, not
Yeah.
anything to do with the bridge or the contract or any of that.
So I think there's gonna be some discussions with Trish about timeframe, because we're waiting anyway on the DNR permit, so, there'll just be more discussions. We'll keep you informed as things move forward. We do have, just to let people know, I hate to call you guys out in the back of the room, but we do have a couple DNR representatives. Do you want to share anything, tonight from what you've heard, or?
Sure. Chad Dolan, I'm the District Fisheries Management
Yeah,
Biologist.
you wanna come up and at least introduce yourselves?
Come on up, Tyler.
Make yourselves known.
Get back, I will use the mic, but Chad Dolan, District Fisheries Management Biologist.
Tyler Stubbs, I'm the community fisheries biologist for the state out of Des Moines.
So as you know, I've had a lot of discussions with you, Doug. Did you grab that? But anyway, there's a lot of questions about damaging the ecology of the system and whatnot. Certainly, we drain water, we drain 11.5 feet. As I've said, and I've been honest with you, especially if this happens in the summer, we could have dead fish. That's absolutely probably going to happen. However, what I've discussed with folks is how to go about doing that drawdown effectively so that we draw that water down gradually. It just kind of makes sense that fish are going to move with the receding water, right? And if they move with the receding water, we can minimize the death of fish, especially if we're able to maintain a pool 8 to 12 feet deep, which is what we've discussed. Now, I'll fully acknowledge, you know, and I've been honest about this, we do not know what the depth of the lake looks like now, simply because there has been sediment deposition over time. That is a reality and it's a fact. You know, so is there some risk involved on not knowing exactly what that depth is? Well, sure there is, you know. Worst case scenario, it's not as deep as you are thinking, and we have more fish die. Is that the worst thing in the world that could happen? What I can show in some of those papers that fell on the floor, what that is fish data. We're a data-driven agency, scientifically collected data. Data dating back to 1967. Last survey was conducted in 2002. It's just looking, it's about every 20 years that we've been in there. Why the long delays? We don't have very good access, right? It's hard for us to get in there. We need tractors, you know, multiple people, a small army in order to get in. Else we would be in there more frequently. But despite only being able to monitor it and survey it about every 20 years, what we can see over that time span is degradation, resulting from sedimentation, nutrient input, the introduction of aquatic invasive species. And they're there. Common carp is one. Bigmouth buffalo is another. They are causing damage to the system. And those were two species that I didn't remember.
What kind of damage do they cause the system?
So, common carp is a species that is a bottom feeder. And essentially it's going to root around in the sediment. It's going to resuspend that sediment, and that's going to add to cloudy water, or what we term as turbidity. Why is that a problem? Because all your desirable sport fishes, like your largemouth bass, your bluegills, etc., are sight feeders. They've got to be able to see in order to feed effectively. And we know via the data that they are not feeding effectively. In fact, we have indices that help us measure whether a fish is in good condition or not. And we know that largemouth bass and bluegill are species that are not in good condition. I would term them as starving a little bit at this point, probably because they're not effective at capturing their food or their prey.
In Walton Lake, you mean?
In Walton Lake, yes, yes. So, yeah, in my mind, you know, I'm going to be honest with you again. Like, we have a lot of fish data. Do we have information specifically about things like sediment depth? Do we know how much sediment or flocculent, loose sediment we have in the upper reaches of the lake? We do not. That's something where if we had access, we would be able to tell you.
You said there was a second. There's two invasive species.
The second is bigmouth buffalo.
Okay.
Okay, that one's a little bit different in that it's a planktivore, but why that's an issue is essentially that particular species is going to feed on plankton, which is a food source for a lot of our young sport fishes. So in turn, if you've got a big-bodied species, and bigmouth buffalo get very large, are consuming those plankton, they are taking it from, you know, essentially small sport fishes that critically depend on it when they're very little. It's not there. If it's not there, they starve to death. Essentially, those fish don't, what we call, recruit very well. So, you know, maybe they make it to juveniles, maybe they don't. If they do they make it to adulthood and really become part of the population, part of that healthy population?
What are sport fishes?
Sport fishes would be the things that people like to capture or catch. So largemouth bass, bluegills, crappies. It depends on where you are. Walton Lake doesn't have them, but you know, other places, muskies, you know, walleyes. So anything like that that people really desire to go out and catch.
Chad, can you clarify the sediment is
Yes.
probably why we didn't know the levels of the lake accurately? Like
Sure.
the reason the levels were so inaccurate is because there's so much sediment that has come off of the
Off the landscape.
Off
So
of the
yeah,
landscape.
no, that's a good
Yeah.
question. So where is the sediment coming from? Well, off the landscape, you know, human activity, right? So we are all building things. You know, we're a highly agricultural state. There's lots of things occurring in what we call the watershed, or the land that drains into the lake, essentially, right? And that has been happening. The lake is 101 years old, and that alone should kind of, you know, raise a red flag. I mean, this was a man-made small impoundment. That's what it is, you know, and it looks awesome, and we get some excellent recreation, and it's been used for, you know, water in the past, etc. But, you know, small impoundments, they don't last forever, especially as that human activity ramps up.
Small impoundments?
Impoundment, yeah.
Impoundments.
So, impoundment. So what that means is, okay, we probably had a natural gully or valley, right? So we built a dam. So in essence, we impounded water. So as water ran from the watershed, it got stopped by the dam. Okay? And that basically backed up and filled up the lake.
So do you have a plan at all to come and check the quality of the lake, or
Yes, do we have a plan?
is that on your schedule at this point?
Well, it's tentatively on the schedule, you know, barring the ability to access the lake. So, and that's one thing, you know, I talked to a few folks about this, is, you know, we've got a 21-foot aluminum plate boat, right? And, you know, with equipment, you know, in order to shock fish, I don't know if any of you are familiar with that activity, but that's how we collect fish. We get out there, we put electricity in the water, we stun the fish, they float up, and or even swim towards us, and then we're able to collect them a lot easier. So, as you can imagine, it's a pretty heavy boat, loaded down with a generator and equipment in order to do that, dip net, multiple people, etc., etc. So essentially we need a pretty decent ramp in order to get in. It doesn't necessarily have to be concrete, but you know, a nice granular ramp, wide enough to allow us to get in and out. And then the other critical thing would be, once we do get into the lake, if we've got to back out 150 feet in order to hit deep water, that's problematic for us. We need, you know, a slope that will allow us to float that boat in order to launch it as well.
Tell us a little bit more about that requirement.
The ramp?
Yes.
Yes,
What
yeah.
kind of slope will it need?
You have any idea what it would be offhand? 13%, that's what I would say, 13. I've seen them anywhere 13 to 16% grade, 16's getting a little steep.
The city's actually, you're building one right now, or just got done in Pleasant Lake, right?
Yes, yep, Pleasant, and then you improve the one, well, Bonnet Field is where they built it.
Okay.
In Pleasant, they improved what you had.
My question then is, if we could build that ramp for you,
Yes.
when would you be available to do your survey, your fish survey, and map the bottom of the lake?
Best case scenario, if you were to build it, we could probably get in by fall. Now, obviously,
I'm sorry, when?
Fall.
Can you be more specific than that?
Yeah. You want a specific day and time?
How long it'll take us to build it?
September, October?
So-
Yeah, I would say September, October, but most likely probably October. And the issue being, okay, like, you could build it for me tomorrow, wouldn't be the best time to go like fish, right? I mean, it's awful darn hot.
Right.
You know, and that is something that we do have to take into consideration. If it stays hot like this, then we pretty much shut down fish monitoring activities, because we don't want to be detrimental to the population. So, fall, I think, is a reasonable time frame. That gives you a lot of time, and obviously that would be a time of year that, you know, would be desirable to us, and the fish would appreciate.
So if we didn't do the drawdown until much later
Yes,
than August,
right.
you could potentially get in there and do your initial surveys this fall, and we could do the drawdown afterward.
If that was something that worked for you, yeah, sure.
Well, we don't know yet, but
Yeah.
it's just an idea that is out there.
Right. Well, and people talk about the smell. The benefit of doing like a drawdown later in the fall and the winter is, you know, you wouldn't have decomposing fish. But I would say this, I mean, people that were wondering about that, you know, fish decompose very quick. You know, especially in heat like this, I would say small bodied fish, 3 days, they're gonna be gone for all intents and purposes. Bigger bodied fish might stick around a little bit longer, but not a whole lot longer, especially, you know, in the conditions that we're dealing with now. The smell, I mean, even if we didn't have a dead fish, gotta be honest, it's gonna smell, and that's simply because things have been decaying in Walton Lake as well as all the other lakes in town, you know, for 100 years, right? And you're gonna have muck on the bottom, and it is gonna smell. Well, how long will it last? Well, until it kind of dries on the top. I told a few folks, I mean, it could dry on top, but don't be fooled, don't go walking on the lake. you know, we don't have an idea how much sediment is out there, but what I can attest to throughout my career, I worked in backwater lakes, you know, for instance, in the Mississippi River. We had tools in order to measure the depth of soft or flocculent sediment. I can tell you in places it was easily, you know, a meter deep, so, you know, over 3 feet, perhaps, you know, more. I can remember, you know, situations where if you were to jump in, you'd probably go up to your chest, so. But, I mean, there are some good things happening. Well, you got Walton Road, acts as a roadway dam, so basically any sediment that's coming in down that arm is gonna hit that dam, and, you know, most likely it's gonna settle out, and it'll have adhered nutrients that settle out as well, which is a good thing. That means that, you know, most of the stuff coming into the lake, a lot of it has been settled out in that basin, and it's not making the main lake. Does that mean none of it is? No, that doesn't mean that. The other issue is that arm in particular, there's a good possibility that it's filled to essentially capacity. You know, once it fills up, it stops doing its job as effectively, right? So, you know, I don't know what we've got there. That's something we gotta find out. Do we have 2 feet of water, a foot of water left? I don't know. We've got water. I can tell you that for sure. Back in 2002, we did a survey. At that point, they said it probably wasn't more than a couple feet deep up there. That was 23 years ago. You know, so who knows what it is today. Now, the same thing could be happening in that east and northeast finger. You've got another, like golf cart causeway, or what I would call an in-lake silt dam, but it is also working to your advantage, and it is trapping sediment and nutrients behind it as well. You know, so, you know, the thing we always say, you know, like today we build those kind of things on purpose. Look at Lake Darling.
Okay, can you address that question with regard to the location of the present, the expired bridge? If a culvert system went in there.
Yes.
What would be the advantages and disadvantages with regard to the larger lake?
Okay, so, you know, right now we have a small connection there, and if the culverts are installed, I saw the plan, we would have a connection. Certainly we'd have water exchanging, but, you know, just being upfront and honest with you again, you know, it still reduces connectivity. You know, ideally, there just wouldn't be anything there at all. That would be the best case scenario. Now, I realize that may not be possible, but that would be the best case scenario, because Tyler and I, we did a tour. You know, I took him around. He hadn't been here in a long time. His office is in Des Moines, but went around the lake. It's compartmentalized, and some of those compartments are doing us a lot of good, right? A lot of good for the lake. The two I talked about, they're acting as sediment catchment. You know, how is that functioning now? Well, it gets people across the lake a lot quicker, for sure. But I think as, you know, the arm behind Walton Road fills up, that sediment's gotta go somewhere, okay? So it's gonna come through the culvert. It's probably gonna hit that next, you know, dam, culvert system. Maybe it doesn't stop as much as if it were a complete levee, so to speak, but it's still gonna slow the movement of water down and allow sediment and nutrients to settle out. So what will happen, that particular area behind, you know,
North.
that dam, yeah, to the north, is gonna fill up naturally.
And so that might be dredged more frequently.
Right, yes, it might need to be dredged more frequently. Now, if you get to the main basin of the lake, do we have sediment deposition? I would say probably so. Is it going to be as much as those upper reaches? Probably not. You know, and a lot of times when we've done lake restorations, you mentioned geode, we didn't move it all that sediment out of the main basin. What we did was reutilize it and push it up into mounds and build fish habitat out of it. Put rock on it. Depends on what we're dealing with. Some of it might be too soft, some of it might be perfect for those sort of stuff.
Okay, so here's the tough question. From an ecological point of view, which is a better model to move across that body of water, a causeway or a bridge with nothing obstructing underneath?
In my mind, because you have protection, you know, from Walton Road and your other cross levees, I would say, you know, a bridge or a structure that would not obstruct the connection.
Flow of water.
Yeah, the flow of water. Exchange of water in this case, not really necessarily flow, but a little bit, you know. You're getting flow in from the watershed, that is draining into the lake, but make no mistake, it's not flowing like a creek or river.
Right.
So,
Okay.
especially
let's,
during heavy rain events.
Let's, thank you so
Yeah.
much for explaining some of these things. Good information. And, yeah, do you have something that you want to say? Last thing?
Yeah, last thing, I could just, my role with this, with cities, dealing with cities, is figure out how to pay for them. So I'm the one that'll help you get grants, find grants, and work with you with media and marketing and that kind of stuff, with what, everything Chad said. So,
Great.
that's what my role will be.
So sure we'll be having more questions and more discussions. All right. Wow. Lots of more information, gang. So let's try to, we've got quite a bit of business, so let's try to wrap up these last two very quickly. And
Before we
yes,
move on, can we just address one question, one issue?
yes.
So this conversation about a discussion between the city and the Walton Club, I'm interested in hearing the conversation, seeing what is being proposed, so could we allow that to take place anyway?
You mean Ed, what Ed was talking about?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it's not binding, it's just a conversation, and we'll hear what they have to say and see if anything comes of it.
I'm not sure what you're asking, when?
We'll just have the conversation that John Morrissey and Noyes were talking about.
When? We could put it on the,
Today?
agenda for the next study session, or?
No.
No, not
You say-
now, here,
Yes.
just
You say
allow them,
Walton- You say Walton Club, are you
The
talking
pro- you
Walton
mean the
Club, or are you
property
talking
committee?
property? Are you talking the
well,
Walton
the
Club?
property committee could do it, I guess. if you
Yeah,
want.
that makes sense, property committee.
So we will listen to the proposal from the Walton, or Ed, who's making this proposal, you or the Walton Club, or,
Talking about it together.
all right, can we have that conversation? All
Obviously,
right,
it needs to get communicated to the Walton Club.
you gotta speak up.
Obviously, it has to get communicated to the Walton.
Right, do they know about this
No,
proposal?
that's why we're not interfering.
All right, I'm just trying to
We're
understand what
suggesting.
happened, what didn't happen, and who knows what, and when and where. All right, so property committee will look at that too, I guess.
Be on our agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
So just to be clear, what are we putting on our agenda? You tell me specifically.
So we're looking at the lease,
So I know we're gonna look at the lease, but what else are we talking about?
and Ed has suggested,
A different bridge.
well, what he wants to do, is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is have Walton Club take over responsibility for that bridge.
Isn't that what we're talking about with the lease?
Yeah,
Okay.
but then he also suggesting that let the Walton Club decide on the model, and the city will only put $134,000 in
I
to
see.
that
Okay.
cost. And the Walton Club would pick up the balance.
Gotcha.
So
That is the proposal.
if they're interested, we might as well hear what they have to say, that's all I'm saying. It's not binding or anything like that.
Okay, so let's move on to Mr. Ed Hipp. Ed, you got 5 minutes. Can you do it in 3?
I can do it in 7.
Gotcha.
Ed, I need you to come to the microphone.
Yeah, I'm just gonna point out this. So it says enlivening communication ethos. My paper said enliven our communication ethos. Ours. Since ethos is such a fancy word, I looked it up. So I'm off track of the actual bridge and the dam, the lake and all that, onto the bigger issue, which we're enjoying right now. We're all talking. These are conversations that were going to be shut off. We've got the DNR has said some things that I don't think anybody in the room knew. So that comes out of having a good communication ethos. The ethos is defined as the character, sentiment, or disposition of a community or people considered as a natural endowment, the spirit which actuates manners and customs. Also, the characteristic tone or genius of an institution or social organization. Have we had a great communication ethos in this town? I think we're an exceptional town, and there's many things about us that are way better than average. This one doesn't seem so to me, and I think that's the beauty of this crazy situation with the lake and the bridge, is it's exposing where we can get strong. So like a lot of things that you don't like when it's happening, you like later that it did happen because it teaches you how you had to get stronger. We are getting stronger. We are talking now. We formed last meeting by unanimous vote an AdHoc committee for citizen engagement. We had our first meeting at the Walton Club recently that Matt and Doug volunteered to chair. We had communication amongst about 30 people. Not everybody agreed on anything, not even all of the people who would be called the hassling activists, if you want to call us that, agree on everything. And we all spoke compassionately, and there was an uncommon amount of compassionate listening. I felt heard in some of the things I said. I saw other people speaking with Doug and Matt afterwards in a manner that felt awesome. I'm thinking maybe we should start having the city council meet at the Walton Club. Instead of, or at least change these fluorescent lights. So I'm really jazzed that all of us are sitting and talking and finding out things. I, as a citizen, would have never thought to call Roger Drish and find out what's the story going on here. Are you planning on charging $60,000 if we get heard? So I don't want to say all the things that he said to me, but I'm really looking forward to when the city sits down and talks to Roger, especially before they throw out the $60,000 roadblock to having any further conversation. I think Roger's going to pleasantly surprise everybody in this room as a wonderful asset for this community. He underbid this project, he told me, specifically because he wanted to make sure this community got a good deal. That's why the next bid was something like $110,000 above his bid. So we have a miracle right there. And we've got a DNR that knows how to take care of the fish. We've got our own staff talking finally with the Walton Club and with the person in this room who knows more about that water and that lake than anybody else in the room, including the DNR, and that's the man who lives on it and takes care of it every day of his life, Larry Padgett. And out of the conversations that Larry has given, finally been able to give to the city, I think lots of possibilities are percolating for what we could do differently. And that's only because our communication ethos is developing and being enlivened by all of us. And I made it 17 seconds short. Thank you.
Ron Blair. We can give you some Caribbean music or something like that. Okay, Ron, go ahead.
All right.
You got 5 minutes.
All right, Stan, come on up. This is Stan Simmons. I don't know if you all know Stan, but he's 91 years old, and he's been doing soil and water conservation work here in Jefferson County and all over Southeast Iowa for about 65 years. So we both have some good lake news to share with you, but it's Pleasant Lake. It's not Walton Lake. So, by the way, Stan is the one who developed all the practices, designed all the practices in Lake Darling and around Lake Darling. He's probably designed hundreds, if not thousands, of private and public ponds and lakes over the course of his career. The condition of the north finger of Pleasant Lake is it was silting in more and more, and we wanted to see if there's anything we could do to stop that process from happening. So Stan got permission from the landowners to go out and look at that land, and now I'm gonna actually turn it over to Stan and tell you what he found.
Well, actually, there's 3 landowners that we were dealing with, and they're all on board. And one of them, in fact, said, as long as this water quality that we're looking at to improve, count me in, he said. So, but the other thing I want to say that back at Pathfinder RC&D days when Dale Krause was running it, I actually was hired to do land treatment above the city reservoirs, including Walton. And some of the terraces that you see in the drainage area on Walton, we did them at that time, and some ponds also. But that was back a few years ago. Probably about 20 years, quite a while. But the landowners are all on board. Soil conservation people will be the ones that do the design and layout, and at that time we'll see what actually is proposed. So, but we made a proposal to come up with a cost estimate, and that's, I think it's a good proposal, and whatever the finished product will be very close to what that proposal is.
So what Stan's alluding to is we actually, this didn't involve the city. You're strictly the beneficiary, but we worked with Soil and Water Commission, or Soil and Water Board, and submitted a grant to the DNR. It was something called Protect Our Lakes. And they've approved that grant. And again, the beneficiary is the city because it's gonna improve the water quality of Pleasant Lake. And they're estimating that it'll stop 150 to 200 tons of soil and sediment coming into the lake each year. So that's happening, and Stan is really the one who opened all the doors.
And for those who've been around forever, it's number 2 pond, right?
Say it again. Number 2
For
pond.
those of us who've been around forever, it's number 2 pond.
Exactly.
It'd be always number 2 pond to
Yeah.
me.
So any questions on that particular point?
I'm just curious because we just talked about this obviously with Walton and runoff, nutrient runoff, and then sediment runoff. And so are there specific actions that landowners are taking to minimize the amount of?
That's what this grant will do.
Oh, okay.
We'll pay 75%, landowners put in 25%, and all these different practices get put in to prevent that sediment from washing into the lake.
Okay, so
And I can answer, I talked to NRSS.
oh, okay. Okay.
When they're done.
Yeah, but just so that I know then the public has to kind of it's a public-private partnership, so to speak. So
That's
like
right.
the landowners have to be involved to a certain
Absolutely,
percentage to
100%.
buy into it. Okay,
Absolutely.
cool. That's awesome.
Great.
Good.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
very good, thanks.
So to answer your question, I had called the NRCS regarding Walton Lake, and so as Stan mentioned that he had done a lot of the work on the upstream areas of Walton Lake. Walton Lake is not listed as an impaired watershed, so it's not eligible for some of them. When DNR does come in and do their assessments, that may help us qualify for some of those funds. We would still be eligible for the cost share where the city could put in money and the property owners. There is some room on the gun club land that the city owns to do some additional improvements in that area that could do some sediment reduction on the land the city already owns. Otherwise, it would be additional private property owners. A lot of that money, like the DNR money, a lot of the NRCS state money is 5 years out, which is why the city really hasn't applied for these, and we appreciate Ron and Stan having a long-term goal compared to what we have in the past on the other grants, so.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the city's real business here that we have on the agenda tonight of action items. So the first is a public hearing on the matter of the sale of city assets, which happens to